Conversations with Elders, hosted by yours truly, Louis-Virie Blanche, welcoming you to Glastonbury Radio 432, where we will be TED Talking in tongues with the elders of all ages, all generations, all races, cultures, and creeds. All gender, religious, or political preferences will be honored and encouraged on Glastonbury Radio 432, Conversations with Elders, where it is our treasured pleasure to roll out the red carpet of golden liquid love light to you in honor of the Queendom Come, soul dancing free to life's heartbeat drum, in honor of mother, daughter, sister, lover, priestess, goddess, friend, sharing the blessings of love's perfect stranger, Deja Vu, welcoming you to Glastonbury Radio 432.
It's too cosmic, much too cosmic for me. Much too cosmic.
Aloha, hola, aho, hello. This is Louis-Virie Blanche, and we are rolling out the red road carpet of golden liquid love light in honor of our beloved Dr. Mosen, our Phi brother, who's here with us again.
Thank you for having me. It's
great
a
to have you again. Thank you for giving us your time and inspiration. Tonight we will discuss the nature of stress.
Yeah.
And when I've spoken to you before, is it a good way to separate types of stress as cellular stress, electromagnetic stress, and psycho-spiritual stress? What do those three categories mean from your perspective?
I look at it, if it's cellular stress, the stress on the soul or mind, or sometimes on physical, like you're striving to achieve something. That is the nature of all creation. They have a strive. They have to strive. They have to struggle to have ascension, and to have what's the word for it? Ascension, and also like ascension and transcendental. In order, that means your soul moves up.
It reaches some form of transcendence.
Transcendence, yeah. So what happened? A tree is seed. When it wants to sprout, it goes through a little stress to break itself apart. When you try, to really go up the hill, you go through a little stress to make to the top of the hill. And like you're exercising, the heart goes through a little stress. But all the stresses that's created is within the boundary. Like the boundary of a pine tree is different than the boundary of grapefruit, or boundary of a grape wine. So therefore, a stress is nothing negative. It's necessary. It's a cause and effect of growth, ascension, transcendence, and also, centropicity, to be centropical. That means order goes up and up. So you have to look at the stress as two different ways. If it's centropical, that means in association and resonation with natural empirical observation, or if it's entropical. Entropical stress is accumulative. When the stress becomes accumulative, it becomes illness. We call it distress. Distress is illness. The stress is healing because you achieve something. You go for a walk, you have a little stress, it makes your body physically be in a better shape. But if it's accumulative, then it's just like food. Anything accumulative in us, it causes illness.
So you might say the fuel, what gives us our power when we know we have a stress to face, we do that intaking of our food, our air, and our water.
Yeah.
And say you have if to have a higher quality of air, we want negative ion in our air, negative ions.
Right. Yeah. The thing is, because anything referred as negative ion, it has synergy. When it has synergy, that means, you know, it motivates your magnicity.
And what would an electron field generator do? Like, do you use those? Do you know?
Those are, since, you know, it's really created by a machine.
Mm-hmm.
That's what entropical.
So that's mechanical.
That's oscillatory.
So we need to rely upon nature's offering of.
Yeah. So that's why it brings us to the whole concept of competition, complementation. Everything in terms of centropical stress is complementary. That's why, for example, we breathe oxygen and we exhale carbon dioxide. Now trees take the carbon dioxide and exhale what? Oxygen. So you see how the plants was created and human or animal were created to be complementary.
Now, are magnetic poles complementary to one another?
Yeah, because it's polarity, North Pole and South Pole. And that's why I showed you here, I have on this device that I showed you, when you have female and male, you create what? Immotation. Immotation was causes what? Rotation, vortation, and peristalsis. And that's what's the process of love.
Oh. And that yearning, our diversity keeps saying, I'm yearning for unity because of the inspiration of diversity.
Yeah, because if plants were exactly like us, they were not diverse from us. And we were like the plant, there wouldn't be any oxygen, there wouldn't be any carbon dioxide. So where was the unity between plants and humans? So everything is created with innate longing for unity, and that innate longing for unity, in order to have potential for that, you need to have totally diverse. None of your two fingers are the same. No two fingerprints are the same. No two petals on a flower is the same.
So in today's moment of time, people have gone through a lot of stress over the last couple of years. And we've talked about meditation versus medication. And I wanted to ask you, in terms of that psycho-spiritual stress that we spoke of briefly, meditation, and you've talked about how when we breathe certain patterns and do certain things physically, we slow our breathing down and our brain waves go into an alpha or maybe even delta or theta.
Yeah.
But when we get excited and adrenaline rushed, our heartbeat and blood pressure, everything increases. But we can't, our boundaries of this stress, we can't live day in, day out, stress to the max without some accumulation of entropy.
Yeah, but what happens, if a stress is entropical, it becomes accumulative. When it's accumulative, that means anything you need to do to achieve mentally, emotionally, or let's say physically, you have to go through a process of striving. You have to strive to go from here to there. You have to strive to, let's say, make something, There's an action. That action, it means you're striving, consuming your synergy. So that is from going from this state to that state. You need to go through what? Compression, the stress. A stress is necessary. It provides for what? It's a mental approach to a strive. Behind any glory, there's a hardship, or there's a stress. Behind, let's say you have to do a garden, you have to go through a little stress, shovel and pick and all that stuff. A seed has to go through the stress to open up and sprout. So a stress is necessary, but again, if it becomes accumulative, just like our nutrition, if it becomes accumulative, we blow up.
Well, I'm thinking about the stress necessary for the birth process.
Yeah, I mean, a mother but that stress is very centropical. All of a sudden,
Yes.
a baby is born.
Yes.
And what? It's that stress. There is more joy to the mother than anybody else.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the
And the
probably
stress,
one of the most beautiful forms of stress.
yeah. Well, I mean, it's not just human. The plants, when they sprout, they go through a stress. The animals, you know, when they bear a child, and that stress is so longing, and it's so emotional that that mother doesn't separate from that baby.
Mm-hmm.
Animal, you know, and whatever species they are, they're very protective.
So the flow of, if we find reverence and we maintain a certain level of patience, acceptance, humility, and graciousness, we're tending to diffuse ourselves of any accumulation of stress.
Yeah. Yeah, it's because entropical stress, which is usually oscillatory or mechanical stress, because we have created a modern culture. Modern culture is very entropical. It's cultivating entropy. Our economy is entropical. Our education has become entropical. You know, everything has become so entropical that what we have to do, it becomes very stressful. It's stressful to go to school instead of, you know, enjoy learning. You see,
Yeah,
all this
it's an interesting thing in schools now. There's a lot of
shooting, yeah.
practices for emergency situations, which, blessed be, there's one occurring today again, another
Yeah, it's terrible because this these kids, you know, they're so infatuated with cell phone, social media, guns, and things like that, which every single one of them, if you look, it's entropical. It's cultivation of entropy. It gets to a point, the threshold, different people have different threshold. So somebody whose their threshold is very low, they flip off.
the accumulation is so fast and accelerates to the point where they lose the ability to reason, to use logic.
Yeah. Well, we have three states of psychology here. It's rational or logical. You can really say, okay, this is bad, I shouldn't do it. It's irrational things to do. But when we go beyond this boundary of rational and irrational, it becomes a state beyond the boundary of rationality or irrationality, which is what? Non-rationality. It's beyond that boundary. And all of a sudden they flip out. So these kids that they go shooting and things like that, they have become non-rational because nothing is rational to their mind.
So this accumulation of stress, there's people that are, I know people that have young children, like teenagers, like, you know, I know people that have children in middle school and high school. And because of this time frame of living these last couple of years, a lot of kids are in counseling.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's just the counseling is a big business right now.
But for us to nurture ourselves and be there to find a means of divorcing ourselves from these fatal conveniences. And I think nature plays a big role in that. If we can oftentimes go out in nature and experience life around us, instead of maybe being pent up in a room, in a building, and you're sitting in front of the TV, the computer, or you're on your cell phone all the time. You know, to go outside and breathe deep. And like you say, when you go out at 3 or 4 in the morning and look at the stars.
Oh, it just gives me a chill.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, it just, what happens, you see thousands of stars, you know, you see Milky Ways and you see flying stars and all that stuff. You say, my God, life is more than this speckle of dust, we call it Earth. And here we are just become so arrogant and entropical, you know, we are just messing everything up. How many times you've seen in a tree, one tree goes and kills about 20 other trees.
Never happens. And if a tree falls over, and it does happen to hit other trees, that process is assimilated into the regrowth of more
Yeah,
trees.
yeah, yeah.
So how are you sensing humanity reaching a point where this paradigm shift they can feel relief from the stress that's been building up? Because it's been a long, I mean, we've talked about the stress building for over hundreds of years.
Yeah, it's since Industrial Revolution, cultural stress has gone up and up. Almost doesn't matter what culture you go to. Yeah. Now, what happens, the issue of competition has to give itself to complementation.
Oh.
Because just imagine if two trees were competing against each other, they would kill each other.
Mm-hmm.
As I mentioned earlier, there's a saying, it says, don't be a hero, because heroes are sad. Because once, you eliminate everybody and you got to the top, here I became, let's say, president of this company. I had to walk all over all of you to get behind the podium, and thank you very much.
And look out, someone's looking to get your position.
Yeah. And then I have to constantly watch out for somebody to come and knock me out of the top.
Yes. Well, I wanted to ask you about the process of embracing the understanding that you have some power to choose from these entropical conveniences.
Yeah. Yes.
And the desires that have been cultivated in people almost subconsciously. There's a drive to keep people kind of on edge, and fear-ridden concepts that make people feel separate and not a part of everything, seems to create tension in different groups of people. Instead of us seeing what we have in common and cooperating, we see that we're different, and that diversity doesn't show its beauty and fear. When we're fearful of one another, it's very difficult to be at peace.
Because we have put the diversity in the context of competition instead of complementation. Diversity, it works in the process, field and flow of complementation. If I put it into context of competition, I have destroyed diversity, and it becomes a burden for a society. And at the same time, and prejudices is evolved, and at the same time, there is no longing for unity anymore. Why would I want to be unified with somebody I don't like? Because I don't like longing for a unity. See, it cancels all those innate creational things that was created in me, in you, in a tree, in a seed, to divide, to multiply, to be complementary. So you are exhaling carbon dioxide, the tree takes that and gives us oxygen. The oceans, goes up in the clouds, and clouds, drop the rain, and it gets in the river, goes back to the ocean.
What a beautiful process, practice, and procedure of sustaining us.
But now, what happens, so I came and cultivated entropical procedure on you. Then, in order for entropy to have a rate of increase, which we call it GNP.
The gross national product.
Yeah. So that means, the velocity of this entropy every year has to become more, 3-4% more, for you to have a smile on me. So I did my job.
I've got to cultivate extra desire every year to keep my profit margin expanding.
Yeah. So therefore, what happens, this velocity of entropy every year, it goes up. That means, when it becomes accumulative and it reaches this threshold, it's the threshold of entropy. And threshold of entropy that all of a sudden causes well pandemic or flip out. This kid that goes and shoots everybody, I mean, innocent children or grandmother or whatever, it has reached beyond its threshold that cannot think rationally or irrationally. He has become non-rational. Rationality does not even cross his mind. To be rational or irrational, to say, oh, I'm irrational, this is a bad action. To be rational, this is, I shouldn't do this. So that's why, you know, what a long time ago we discussed about the issue of morality versus legality.
Uh-huh.
Morality is within me, legality is outside of me.
And if you don't have the morality in you, the legality might come looking for you.
Yeah.
Because you go past the boundary of what is morally and ethically valid. But you know, I wanted to share something with you. You know, they say that children, when they're born, they need two very important things: is a positive caregiver, and they need a toxic-free environment.
Yes.
But if your caregivers are toxically stressed, I mean, if the mother and father can't provide a peaceful caregiving environment to the child, and they are living in a toxic, stressed environment with thoughts and activities, emotions that are all geared to cause this stress to be there all the time, eventually something has to give.
Yeah, I mean,
but you know what they said was in tests they've done, I think they did some tests in Hungary. There's a lot of gypsies in Europe, but a lot of gypsies in different countries.
Yeah.
And they don't get respected in many communities. The gypsies are not wanted. And say you don't like a certain person, the way they look or their culture or something about them. They say if you walk with a person, just synchronizing your steps, taking a walk, you don't even have to talk to the person. They had people in Hungary, they would walk with people they thought were gypsies. They wouldn't talk, they would just walk together. And there was a type of rhythmical entrainment that occurred in the process of walking together. So the next time the person that had thoughts about gypsy people, when they would see a gypsy person, they would actually have a better thought about that type of person. Just from synchronizing our steps, just from walking together.
Yeah. Well, that was actually a saying by Malcolm X. He said, as long as we can walk and talk together, we can solve any problem.
Oh, yes, indeed. And you know, singing together, clapping your hands together, the cooperative, anything we do with togetherness has a beneficial emotional, psychological, and you might say even spiritual effect on us. It has a positive effect.
This some of our pandemic is, but all of these has resulted as entropical competition. It's entropical stress. Entropical stress is not assimilative. Just like fertilizer is not assimilative by microorganism of the soil. Toxic sprays and all that, or industrial or entropical, let's say carbon dioxide, is accumulative in big cities. It's not assimilative.
And you know, some cities, people basically go out and look at the skyline and it's very hard to see anything but the accumulation of toxic pollutants in the air.
Actually, they say, you know, in some of the very toxic polluted cities, the children's brain, instead of being white, it becomes totally gray. Because of carbon dioxide that goes in their body. So in my opinion, all of our pandemic is due to accumulation, accumulative effects. And these effects are effects of entropy. So that's why you notice, you know, the level of stress in last generation versus this generation is less. And it seems, you know, these teenagers, they're doing something which is really, to us, is not really, it's horrifying to us, which is one generation older. but then for them it's really just um, normal to go and shoot people. Or look at the one, let's say how we converse to our parents and how our children are conversing to us. The tone, the words, everything is different. Because that longing for innate, being a father or a son is diversity. Being a father and daughter is diversity. Or with your parents is diversity in age and many other aspects. But there was a longing for unity in the last generation, which is not in this generation. That's
the fear of separation and the illusion of being and feeling separate.
Yeah. That's why that longing is what? Respect. Love for respect, which, you see it in their tone, you see it in their voice, you see it in their statement and behavior, everything, So our pandemic is basically accumulative oscillatory cultivations and velocity of entropy.
So if we're in the office or the bedroom or places where we live and work, and we had the option of using pink noise or white noise, can you differentiate the effect that pink noise and white noise has on our stress level?
Well, because anything which is oscillatory is, it goes back to the concept of oscillation causes dissension or causes devitalization of vibration in general. So anything, which is whatever you want to label it, if it's oscillatory, it's suppressing vibratory. And that's why scientists like Reif or Wilhelm Reich and Bob Beck and many others, they showed that when there is something unfriendly in the human body, if you find the vibration of that living organism and you create an oscillation in the body, we are not hosting them, they leave the body, and that's how they got rid of illnesses. Or let's say Avicenna, 1,000 years ago, let's say somebody had cancer, he would give him another disease, which was like, let's say, tuberculosis. Tuberculosis would destroy the cancer cells, and then he was able to recover the tuberculosis because it was easier to recover the tuberculosis. So tuberculosis got rid of this other disease. So this is healing by association.
It's known as healing by association.
Yeah. So let's say, if somebody is brokenhearted, their wife passed away or divorced or something like that, they are very depressed. But when some other person comes and falls in love, all of a sudden it heals them. It kind of wipes out the illnesses of that other emotional issue. So that's why,
love.
Yeah, that's why, sometimes, you can heal an emotional illness or physical illness by associating another one to it. Avicenna used to heal people, because some of the diseases, it's not easy to heal. So he induced another illnesses that got rid of that, and he was able to heal that secondary one.
So this is a process. Avicenna was how many centuries ago?
10 centuries ago.
And here we are in the 21st century. We have a lot of conveniences. We have a lot of, people might go out and try to find a certain kind of bed to sleep in. You've got to decide what kind of car you want to drive, what kind of home you want to live in. What are your materials of your clothing going to be made of? Do you have plants in your house that help purify the air? There's a lot of considerations.
Yeah.
And you have to be a very comprehensively aware person to diffuse all the potential stresses in the modern life.
It is velocity of culture. That's why, you want to do everything faster. You want faster cars. You want faster cell phone. Everything is faster and more destructive because it's entropical. So therefore, you know what we are doing? We are increasing faster and faster contraction and compression. We are contracting and compressing what? Time and space from its natural flow.
And you know, there's a very big fashion in doing that with music. Most music is compressed to the point where a lot of people have never heard an non-compressed music. And it takes the natural essence and qualities out of sound to strip it down to a binary code that doesn't have those overtones and undertones. The extraneous sounds actually adds a beauty to the resonance of sound.
Yeah, it's the digital recording.
Right.
It used to be analog, now it's become digital. And before, you know, it was live music. But now, in order to put it, you know, we put it into analog or digital, but when that recording, when you are singing, you are vibrating. But if I record you and play you, I'm using an oscillation of you.
And if you got your ear pods in all day listening to oscillation, that's kind of a diet. Your sonic diet is maybe in need of some change.
Because our pandemic, one after another, you know, because our pandemic is due to entropy. And since entropy is ever increasing, any solution to entropical problem is further and deeper entropy. So this is not the end of the or the last pandemic. We're going to have all different types and style and fashions of pandemic.
And do you feel this is a means of inspiring us to awaken to the empirical observations and honoring the reverence of nature?
Yeah, it's not your words or mine. Because if it becomes mine and yours, it becomes theory.
There you go.
And that theory is my assumption. This is assurance. There is no assumption. I mean, and there is no way around it. You know, you can't push the river.
Nature doesn't want to sell you insurance. It just gives you the assurance.
Yes. And therefore, you know, it aspire your morality, not legality. And it aspire meditation, not medication, because medication is an industry. It's sick care. It's not health care.
And think of the fear that has to be induced in a person to sell them an insurance policy.
Well, it's otherwise I constantly have to see repetitive fears or fractalating fears. That if I don't do, I'm going to have an accident. When I'm going to have an accident, they're going to take me to hospital. I don't have this, and if I die, I don't have insurance.
And the cost of dealing with your body will be a burden to someone else, right?
Yeah.
What you leave behind. So we're leaving, that would be an accumulation of the toxicity of your body going through the changes.
Yeah. See, that's why we have to, just like nature, we have to be complementive. Nothing works in individual or competitive. It has to be a team and complementary. Otherwise, it requires much more stress if it's competitive. The stress, again, is necessary if it's synergetic, if it's natural, because any things you try to attempt to do, it requires a strive, a struggle. You try to study something, learn something, experiment, it all requires a little effort. And that effort is a stress. But if it becomes accumulative again, becomes distress, which is illing. Everything in nature is field and flow.
Well, that harmony, and to be in harmony with that field and flow is our ultimate achievement, to cooperate with nature's harmony.
Yeah. Well, I mean, It's the field. Do I want to flow in this field, or I'm going to create my own field? And if I'm my own field, I'm going to give you all kind of lethal, fatal conveniences because I cultivate you in that. Because this is the easier to go.
So how are you going to, as a 21st century person, discern which inspiration and information has the most value if you don't observe that same process happening in nature? In other words, if a man tries to sell you this idea and you don't see that reflected in nature, there's a good chance that it is entropical and something to be avoided.
Yeah, because first issue is that we are trapped in cultural system, not cultural function. Cultural function, which is the function of nature, becomes civilization. And culture, cultivation, in mechanical and tropical lifestyle, it becomes modernization. And we have to get into it, flow with it.
But humans create machines that cultivate desire. Nature has processes, practices, and procedures that harmonize civilization to cooperate in a way that's far more stress-free than we can even think of creating as humans.
Yeah, that's why if we paradigm shift, all of a sudden in terms of rushing, we get into patience.
Oh.
Because the stress, it takes our patience away because the stress is as a result of competition, pressing the time and the space and pushing the river.
So in your process of your work of looking at how your designs have been attuned to these principles, when you design a home, when you are working with different things that you use in your, you would consider yourself, you've got architecture, engineering, and naturopathic understandings, right?
Yes.
And they come together in a type of synergy that gives an overview of how important fractalization is to all these endeavors. For the fractal flow, the phyometry of life is the thing that we're talking about the most here.
Yes. We have to have a peripheral education, peripheral vision if you want to be self-sufficient. Otherwise, dependency will go up more and more. It becomes entropical. So therefore, that there are certain basic things in life that we all need. For example, we need food. We need heating or cooling of our houses, biological comfort. We need the synergy for that. We need also, in order, we have to educate ourselves about symbiotic relations with our environment, field and flow, not input and output. So we need that kind of education. And also we need the healthcare. So these are 5 basic things everybody, no matter where you are, we need. We need synergy, we need shelter, roof over our head, we need food, and we need healthcare, and then education. We have to have education to be in the state of transcendence.
And you've called it educarement.
Yeah, educarement, because you care about who educating you, the nature.
And you have to care who's brainwashing you as well.
Yeah, television.
Telling you what to see.
Yeah, I tell you what your vision should be. Television, I tell you your vision. Don't bother. It's comfortable and you don't have to even think.
You can stay at home, we'll deliver it to you.
Yeah, it's me right in your living room. You can lay on your couch and don't even move.
We will deliver these fatal conveniences right to your door at no extra charge. Why
Yeah,
would they want to
yeah.
do that?
Yeah, that's why it's now. Then that's why we have now that has become, instead of cellular functions, we have cellular systems.
Oh,
So what happened here is we have to really look at everything. Carrying capacity of pollution, for example, carrying capacity of toxin in human body, there's a threshold. So this carrying capacity, if it's the entropy has entropical carrying capacity. When it gets to a point that carrying capacity has invaded or surpassed its boundary, every event will be pandemic. Whether if it's a political pandemic or it's a health pandemic or social pandemic, it could be psychological, and we see the effect of that psychological pandemic right now in this generation.
so human thoughts, actions, emotions, and feelings.
Yeah.
Attuned to harmonious empirical observations in resonance with nature can serve as our guide, but we have to stop edging God out with the ego and GMOing, get God move over. I'm going to outsmart nature and build a better system when nature's functions are superior and already inherent to our sustainability.
Yeah, because God move over because I can go faster. You're blocking me.
And you talked about cooperation. I thought about this. What if Elon Musk, Richard Branson, Jeff Bezos, they all have these ventures into outer space, and they're doing it separately. They're not cooperating with one another. They may be using some of the same components, but there's a competition involved there.
Oh, yes.
So what if they showed the world, we're going to cooperate, instead of Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, and Richard Branson doing separate ventures into outer space, we're going to unify our efforts. It would probably cost less money and involve less time, and they probably could share in their understandings of what they're working on, right?
Because what happens, if you look at the way they got very wealthy, is centralization of entropy.
Exactly. And
So
that's how
if
they
you
see the only way to sustain that is to maintain that same process.
So if you have to bring self-sufficiency to everybody, that everybody produces their own food. That's why I said those 5 issues. Everybody is producing their own shelter, and their shelter is producing their heating and cooling and let's say biological comfort, not heating or biological comfort. And then, they have a mean of a complementive education, educatement. And then, the centropical health care and all that stuff. Then these centralized services would not exist, because everything becomes decentralized, because everything in creation is decentralized. You look at the stars, the skies, everything, there is no such a thing as centralized.
Well, does nature have a form of inflation?
Of course. No. Because the inflation was so much that the nature created unemployment. All the trees are not employed anymore. Unemployment has gone up in the forest.
Now,
all the animals are out of work.
The cost of the air, the wind, the water, all those things are just inflating in cost. But actually, by man's systems, we are affecting the cost of air, and we are affecting the cost of water.
Yeah.
And that should be common sense enough to us. Wow, what we've been doing, all this abundant water, we've got to the point where we can't even drink it or use it that much.
Yeah.
All this air, it's not even worth breathing anymore. Who's doing this to this environment?
Exactly.
Which companies, what executives are saying, it's okay, you live in New Jersey, just dump that stuff in the Hudson River.
Yeah.
You know, and
But
you
if
know,
you do it to a certain amount, it's okay. And I decide that certain level.
but if everybody joins in, it accumulates.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
The Cuyahoga River in Ohio actually caught on fire because there was so much garbage floating in it.
Yeah, yeah.
And blessed be the Hindu belief, but you know, the Ganges River is very polluted, and yet people go there and honor its holiness. But there's, you know, we're living like in the New York area when the Hudson River got so polluted, people in the 40s and 50s used to go to the river and they would swim and they could catch fish, and it was a different way of living. But then as years passed, the fish became distorted. They had ulcers. The water wasn't good to swim in. No one went to the beach anymore.
Yeah.
So Pete Seeger, he started a process of cleaning up the Hudson River. And it actually worked to the point where all the people in Brooklyn and, you know, New York and New Jersey and places that were dumping in the river realized that this is not a good practice to follow.
Well, it's just a natural field and flow of centralization causes, you know, accumulation.
But what kind of education did you earn? What kind of degree taught you to do things that are so fatally stressful to yourself and your family and other living beings?
You know, basically our education, in my own case, I have to confess, everything that I educated, I did the opposite because I knew it was entropic. So it
So when they were trying to teach you certain things, you had another understanding of what they were saying, that you didn't fall for the brainwashing.
But what happens, you know, you look at that education, even if it was entropical, as an eye opener. But you have to look at the both side of the coin. One side is entropy, one side entropy. But they educated me with entropy. But at the same time, you can't close your other eyes with this entropy.
Well, where do you get that revelation from? If the libraries you go to and the bookstores and the teachers and the people that you associate with are all stuck in that same tunnel vision.
Well, it's the nature, you know, that's why you have to have a peripheral vision. You don't want a specialization because you lose your diversity. When you specialize something, you're just looking at very one fine part of the spectrum of life.
Limiting the variables.
Yeah. Then you want to be subjective, so you're not judgmental. That means everything in nature teaches you is very subjective, not objective. But they taught us to be a specialized, focused, and objective. On the other side, you have to be subjective, self-sufficient, and peripheral vision. Because if you don't have peripheral vision, you cannot relate A to B, C to E, and I have to get a translator to tell me what B is telling me and what A is telling me. And by the time it goes from A to B, between that translation becomes news media. And things get distorted.
And that one pyramid you showed, the media is at the top of the pyramid, and it affects everything. Yeah,
because if I'm specialized, I know more and more about less and less until I know everything about nothing. So therefore, you know, for me to relate to you, I need a translator, a mental process translator, not language necessarily, but mental, what you mean and what I mean. Somebody has to translate us, and that's the medium.
So can I be proud that I've mastered the understanding of education, though, so that I know the most about nothing than I know more about nothing than anyone else compared to me?
Yeah.
Is that your goal in life, to know more and more about nothing so that you can master that, as that's your degree?
Well, you know, you need to know a little bit about everything instead of a lot about nothing. Because at the finite becomes nothing. But if you, let's say, if you know a little bit about gardening, a little bit, you know, doing your house, a little bit, to cultivating, make your food, make this, and a little bit of everything. You can relate them together instead of somebody else relate them for you.
So
Because
when a
especially
person has those types of multiple talents and multiple understandings, is it okay to say they might be a Renaissance person, that they've got, or is that word kind of that's not a good word to use?
Renaissance is not, because Victor Hugo said Renaissance and Industrial Revolution was a sunset in humanity. Everybody mistook for dawn.
But mistaking the sunset for dawn, it was a compliment to say, whoa, my friend Dr. Mosen, he's a Renaissance man because he knows a lot about a lot of different things.
Yeah. I mean, maybe it just, if that definition or title refers to that issue, that's fine.
Right.
But I mean, Renaissance was not a contribution. Neither was Industrial Revolution, because all of a sudden it was based on entropy.
And so now we are not really having to try. It's happening because of the evolution of this accumulated entropy will either inspire us or expire us.
It has to wake us up. Yeah.
The expiration date on our products coming up pretty fast.
Yeah, I remember, because there is a carrying capacity of environmental carrying capacity. The environment has a carrying capacity for entropy. Economy has carrying capacity for entropy. Otherwise, debt becomes so much, you can't pay it anymore. So that means it collapse. So everything, has a carrying capacity. Our body has a carrying capacity for toxin, for example. After a certain limit, liver cannot process it anymore. Colon cannot function anymore. Heart, goes out. I mean, our blood vessels are all accumulated with lipoprotein A. So, it's just, we have to understand everything in creation is governed by polarity and what? Boundary. And bridges, when it says bridges, that means what? Complementary.
No walls, bridges. No borders, boundaries.
Yeah. Anyway, you can't push the river.
Well, the river that flows out to the sea of infinite potentiality will connect with the ocean of consciousness, won't it?
Yeah. See, there's a consciousness in the water. When it goes up to come and put the rain and give life vitality, that's why we are calling a sensation, emotion of vitality, vital emotion, not deadly emotion. So when it comes here, the water has this longing. Even it has become diverse into millions of drops of water. But that drop, again, it has the longing, innate longing to unify to the ocean again.
And that's 39 degrees to 212 degrees, right? There's a spectrum there, water. It freezes at 39, right?
It freezes at 32, and then, it vaporizes at 212, but no ocean goes to 212. So high is it that about, let's say, 70, 80 degrees vaporizes. And that brings us to the whole concept that all function of the creation is not temperature, heating or cooling or any, there is the issue of magnicity.
Magnicity.
That magnicity is emotion. That water has the longing to come and feed these plants to provide what? Vitality, right? And then it has the longing to go back to where it came from. Then that fulfills the whole cycle of nature. And everything, look at the same thing with the sun, with the moon. Everything has what? It has a period of what? Fractulation, a period of replication.
So as far as our satellites can go, as far as they can see, the fractal flow is always there.
Yeah, and no entity from micro to macro to mega, from within or without, ever repeats its position in time and space twice. So that's why there is no circle. There is no closed loop. Everything is open. It's a spiral. Earth never repeats its position in time and space twice. Nor does an atom or a particle or big Milky Ways. And everything in creation is in open flow, open system, open function. I should never use system.
So even when the clock that we look on the wall that's got the circular face, and we look at the linear time, the Earth and the planets in their dance, their orbit, you're saying they never really get to the same exact place twice.
See what happens? Earth is not moving around the sun in an orbit. Orbit is a closed loop. It goes, since it's in a rotational motion, it goes in a vorbit.
A vorbit, it's elliptical.
Yeah, well, it's egg-shaped actually. See what happened? The one side is compression. So that's why the spiral that keeps going up and up and up, and every 24,000 years, you know, they say every 25,000, every 24,000, this spiral comes to contraction and expansion. Just like exactly in a micro level, exactly as blood goes in your blood vessels, water goes in our nervous system.
That peristalsis.
Yeah.
Well, that precession of the equinoxes, some cultures call that spiraling, that point where the beginning becomes the end and the end becomes the beginning.
Yeah, and nobody knows about beginning or end of anything except God. Because beginning and the end is when there is no time. Everything we think and comprehend is in function and context and domain of time and space.
So we create calendars to try and keep track of what we really can't keep track of. It's basically an illusionary activity.
Yeah. You know what happens, you know, when somebody liberates themselves from time and space and calendar, their efforts, cause and effect, the effort of their strive or a stress is become lasting. Their work for thousands of years, you know, doesn't change. Still people refer to it. And some people who are very dominated by time and space, 2 years later, somebody else proved something. It doesn't, their thing is not very lasting. So the lasting effect of anybody's strive, anybody's work is liberation of time and space. Not that we can get rid of time and space, but liberating from magnicity of time and space. Earth is not going in an orbit. That's why it's not repeating its time position in time and space twice, because it's in a spiral around the sun, and sun is around the spiral around the Earth. Everything is swimming around each other, and they all know how to swim.
Well, shall we meet in Vorbit the next time?
Yeah, because that's why there's no circle. There's no circle or there's no loop. Everything is open.
Infinite variables everywhere.
Yeah. Within and without.
Within and without. Well, bless you. Thank you for taking time again to have our fiversations. And may the fractal flow create a beautiful golden liquid love light glow.
Yes. Blessing.
All right. Bless you, my brother. Thank you.
Okay. Bye.